Hi, Sai. I'm here with Patrick today.
Hi, Sai.
Hi, Sai. I'm here at the A&W, the American fast food restaurant in Okinawa. Only in Okinawa in Japan. First of all, could you introduce a little bit about yourself?
Hi, everybody. First of all, I love Okinawa. Before moving here, I had been coming to Okinawa since 1985.
Much before we were born.
I have in Nihongo, やっぱりkarate kichigai desuけども, that's a Japanese expression. Means I'm crazy about karate, and karate is what brought me here so many years ago. And then I just fell in love with the culture and with the more Western influence under the name of progress. What I love so much about the island seemed to be fading away. And so I guess in some ways I've come chasing that dying culture. I wanted to be part of this super friendly place, the food, the historical significance, all of the things that I have come to hold so dear through the practicing the art of karate are embraced here quite naturally. And so 3 years ago, I had been living in Australia for some years. I had lived here in Japan for 10 years. My wife is Japanese, and our children, we have 2 children. They were born on the mainland, and although my wife is from Nagano Prefecture, we were there 10 years, and then I got called off to a job in Australia, karate-related job, to teach and write a program for karate instructors. And being Canadian, and Australia are connected to the motherland, England, right? So I was able to get a citizenship there. So I took out a dual citizenship, and we stayed about 20 years. And my children finished their education, and ironically, they've come back to Japan. He's a lawyer in Tokyo, and she's a doctor in Yokohama.
Wow.
And so, but we were still in Australia, and I decided, coming up to retirement, let's immigrate back to Japan and come and reside in Okinawa. So we did. We came and for the first year or so, we were in Tomishiro, Tomigusuku, in Toyosaki. Southern part, yeah. Beautiful area, but very expensive. We found a house here in Uruma, so about 2 years ago, and settled down and just living the rest of my dream here.
Yeah, so you're gonna die here.
Well, it's interesting. I have a very, very good friend of mine. He passed away 2 years ago at the Beiju, 88 歳, 88 years old. And he's American karate master. And he practiced a kind of karate called Goju-ryu karate. And Goju-ryu karate, you may not know, was developed by an Okinawan pioneer whose name is Miyagi Chojun. So, Mr. Miyagi in the movies, right? And so my friend's dream was to be interred here in Okinawa when he died. I found a haka for him.
Did you?
Yeah, over at Urasoi Castle Ruins Cemetery Park. When I called them and spoke to them in Japanese, I found out, that's Urasoi. And at that time, I was in Tomigusuku. So it's quite far away. So I said to the guy, I said, maybe I'll come to see you another day because I'm very busy and it's very far away. He said, where do you live? I said, I live in Tomigusuku. He said, I live in Tomigusuku. And I said, I'm in Toyosaki. He goes, oh my God, I'm in Toyosaki. He was my neighbor. So we met that day. And then he drove me the next day. And I said, so when I used to go to visit the Miyagi Chojun haka, I always used to go up to Urasoi Jo and come down the back staircase. It's a shortcut to get to the thing. So I've never actually been from the street level. It's a huge cemetery. So when I got there, I went up the street level. And as I was going up, I said, I know this place. Oh, how do you know this place? I said, the famous karate master. Oh, you know Miyagi Chojun. And I said, yeah. He said, well, the haka that we have available is literally 10 meters away from him. And I'm, oh my God. Yeah, so I bought the haka for my friend, And then now, but because of COVID, we cannot bring him. But he's ashes now. We have his ashes. So in July of this year, they're going to bring the ashes over. We're going to have a ceremony to put him in there. So anyway, the secret is, I bought the haka beside it.
Beside it. Alright.
Yeah. So he asked me, he said, "Are you going to die here?" I said, "Yeah." And I hope it's a very long time from now, and I die of old age. Haka is like a house. It's not like underground, you know. It's and the spiritual beliefs of the Okinawan people are very Confucian-oriented, based. So filial piety, ancestor worship, is very important. So the bodies are put in urns, put into the haka, and then there's a kind of a spiritual ceremonies every a few years. You know, there's certain years where the bones are cleaned and so on and forth, and the family will get together, go to the haka, sit around with the obento and the choto awamori toka ne, and to spend time with their ancestors. So I like that.
We are having picnic with them.
Yeah, it's we Western people, because usually if our parents or relatives die, we bury them in the ground or put them in a cemetery. We might go every once in a while to say hello, or you know. But in this culture, as you know, it's a ritual.
We bring them back from the heaven and have some kind of party with them.
And why not? Why not relive those indelible memories with your friends or family at the spot where your father or mother or friend or sensei spent their last years on earth? I think it's a wonderful idea. And anyway, so that's just one of the many things that I like about Okinawan culture.
What do you do for a living?
Let me preface that question with a quote I learned a long time ago. If you ever find something that you are truly passionate about, you never have to work a day in your life. So my hobby became my job. And my job, my hobby. I love karate. I began practicing at a very early age, so around 9 years old. It was, I don't know, what do you say, love at first sight?
What was the trigger?
In Canada, we had an athlete who was a judo, and he had won the Canadian Championships a few times. And then in 1964, judo was introduced to the Olympic Games. Tokyo was hosting the Olympic Games in 1964. And so in Tokyo area, the neighborhood called Kudanshita, they built a big arena called Budokan. The Canadian boy, whose name is Doug Rogers, became a member of the Canadian Olympic judo team. And the Canadian Broadcasting Company followed him around to videotape his competitions. And he came to Japan to study at the Kodokan under the famous judoka named Kimura, Japanese judoka, very powerful. And so Doug Rogers became uchideshi. He fell in love with Japanese culture like me. He married a Japanese girl like me, and he lived in Japan for a very long time, same as me. But when the games were held, he won all fights down to the gold medal. And in the gold medal heavyweight match, he fought a Dutchman named Anton Geesink. And he lost the match. But Geesink was a giant, you know, and Doug Rogers not big like him. But it was a very close match. So this documentary film was shown in my shogako. And I watched that. In the first week of September, when we went back to school for our assembly, I watched that film. I want to do that. What do you want to do when I want to do that? And that's how I got started. And so I went to the dojo in the following week with my mother, and I enrolled in the dojo. And then they said to me, okay, so classes begin on this and this and this day. But we got mixed up. Where I come from in the little town, they have a Hombu dojo, but they also have the community center. It's like for young men and women. But I thought I'm supposed to go to the YMCA,
Right.
not to the Hombo Dojo. I think Hombo Dojo is just for the adults, and the YMCA is just for the children. So I went to YMCA on the wrong day. And I never practiced before. So I saw the people in the dogi and the punching and, I don't know. My sensei said, are you here for the practice? I said, yeah, it's my first time. He said, okay, get in line and go. That's
how you started.
I thought it was judo.
No, judo.
I didn't know.
Like karate was judo.
Yeah. So that's, is that 60?
60 years.
Oh my God.
You've been practicing.
Oh,
60 years.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
Wow.
Oh my God.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So that's the beginning, yeah. And then of course, all through high school, and then of course in high school I loved, I was wrestling and boxing and gymnastics and football and so on. But competitively, depends how I look today. But when I was an athlete, I won quite a bit, and I got a lot of magazine publicity, and I got the offer to write a book.
Cool.
And, it's interesting because at the time I knew I loved it, but I was the smallest boy in the class. We moved quite far away, and so in the next dojo, I was the smallest boy, and then the next were older teenagers, and they bullied, like a bully to me, and so, but I never quit. Immovable spirit. I'm not going to quit. I continued to practice, and then in 1974, I won the North American Karate Championship.
Wow.
Yeah. Then I became a team member, and I represented my country 5 times in international competition. And then I had the chance to compete in many, many open style tournaments. And I of course, did the kumite and the kata, and also we like the kobudo, the weapons. I met my wife in Vancouver in the early 1980s, and then we decided we're going to get married and come to Japan. And so she's from Nagano Prefecture originally, so we got married in Nagano in a very traditional Japanese wedding ceremony. But at that time, I wanted to study Budo more at the International Martial Art University. So in those from around 1988, they started to make what they call the International Budo Symposium, and so I got a chance to participate, and it opened up a new world for me to look at karate as a part of Budo. So karate is just one tradition, but Budo is a pathway, imagine a bicycle wheel. It has many spokes, yeah? Imagine the wheel is the end of Budo, and the middle is the heart and soul of Budo. But to get from the outside to the inside, there's many ways. You could study Judo. This is one spoke. Or Aikido. This is another spoke. Or Kendo. Naginata-do. Iai-do. Sumo. This is Ikebana. Shodo. A lot of ways. And Karate-do mo. So when you climb a mountain, there may be many ways to go up to the mountain. But when you get on top of the mountain, you look up, there's only one moon. The Budo, the way, only has one goal. Condition the body, cultivate the mind, nurture the spirit, and practice. So those are the 4 corners of Budo. Now, my age, obviously my fitness is not the same as when I was young. In 2 more months, I get both my knees replaced. In the last few years, I gained a lot of weight. My neck can hardly walk. So I'm anxiously waiting to get the surgery so I can go back to regular training again, But in the meantime, I read a lot. So I've written 9 books.
9 books?
Yeah.
Karate, all of them?
Yeah, about karate, karate history, philosophy, its spiritual element, the pedagogical is a fancy word that means how to teach that which there is to learn. because different people learn different ways. And maybe some people might say, oh, that's discriminatory, but it's not. For example, children don't learn the same thing as adults do the same way. Maybe if you're emotionally or intellectually or physically challenged, you cannot learn the same way. And if you're old or young, so there's many things about how to impart information to create lesson plans. So I studied this part as well. But my specialty is in karate. There's many different types of karate. You know, Shoto, Shiro, Wado, Goju, Shorin-ryu, Uechi-ryu, Ishin-ryu, you know. But the one thread that weaves together all of karate is kata. So my specialty is understanding how the kata works. What acts of physical violence, which are habitual in human nature, do the kata deal with? So we have a system of two-person drills which recreate those acts of violence and use passive resistance to recreate the scenario, and then using gradual to exponential investment of aggressive resistance to bring the life to reality, to test the veracity of your functional movements, until such time as it doesn't matter what the person does, if it's unscripted or random, you're still able to effectively deal with it. And then by reverse engineering the two-person drill into a solo template and ritualizing it, you can then see how the solo movement of the kata is linked to other similar movements to create a creative geometry which creates something greater than the sum total of its individual parts. And this is what kata represents, and this is my specialty. I created an organization while I was still on the mainland of Japan, and the organization has grown exponentially over the years. It's 30 years. We have about 25,000 members in about 30 countries. So, and this year will be the first year we're going to bring them all, not all, but we're going to bring 200 or 300 black belts to Okinawa, to the Okinawa Karate Kaikan, for kind of a gathering to practice these types of things. I hope you'll come, so then you can meet many more, many foreign people.
There's so many like foreigners practicing karate in Okinawa.